generations. So I vowed to eliminate them all. Jack Sparrow cursed me. I will have my revenge.
Hello, and welcome to Film Rant. It's that time again to put myself through the slog that is a Pirates of the Caribbean film. I'll be honest here, I've never really been a big fan of this franchise. The first movie is decent, the second is average, and so is the third. While the fourth installation was met with largely negative reviews, I actually didn't mind it that much. It changed the formula a bit and I could appreciate that, but I totally understand why it went down about as well as an Adolf Hitler stand-up routine. That said, Johnny Depp is just captivating and camp enough that I can be enticed to watch these movies, so let's see if directors Joachim Ronning and Espen Sandberg have added a solid addition to the franchise. To do that, I will be discussing spoilers, so beware of that before you forage any further into these waters, me old mate. As always, I'll begin with the characters. I'm not going to mention much about the already established Pirates of the Caribbean legends, except that I thought Mr. Depp was quite poor in this installment. It's clear that Jack Sparrow is very much a pantomime character as opposed to a movie character, but in this one he was just uninspired, and for some reason Depp changed the way he speaks. Sparrow's accent and enunciation is a trademark of his character, and it was incredibly off-putting in this movie when I saw it was different. It also doesn't help that his character wasn't written well either. I've read funnier obituaries than some of his jokes, and there's a scene where he trades his beloved compass for a bottle of rum. Now I know Jack loves rum more than the local AA group, but he would never trade that compass for anything, especially not a bottle of rum. So Pirates 5 completely fucks up its main and best long-standing character. Not a good start, is it? We have three newcomers to the franchise. Henry Turner, played by Brenton Thwaites, who literally looks like a little girl's man doll, Karina Smith, played by Kaya Scodelario, and Captain Salazar, played by Javier Bardem. We'll start with the real-life man doll first. Brenton Thwaites' performance was perfectly fine and I enjoyed his character. He was quite generic and not all that interesting, but he was a likeable guy. What I take issue with is that he's made out to be very important because he's the son of Will Turner. Okay, great. But at no point in the movie does this fact ever matter. Brenton could have played a guy called Henry Random and his path would have been pretty much the same. The fact he's Will's son seems to only exist so they had an excuse to briefly call back Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley for an admittedly touching and enjoyable scene at the very end of the movie. When I mean brief though, I mean shorter than a Ronda Rousey fight. It's hardly worth it. I also have to mention that the kid they hired to play younger Will gave an awful performance. I mean, I feel bad criticising a kid, but surely there was a better child actor they could have chosen. He was so wooden and you could tell he was just reciting dialogue from a script. I hope he proves me wrong and becomes the next Matthew McConaughey, but for this movie, I thought he stuck out like a dick in a buffet. Karina Smith was an enjoyable character. She's a smart, strong woman who I honestly think could take on any of the pirates and win. It's a shame this franchise is probably at an end with regards to her character. I feel like she has room for growth and could become a really solid character, so Pirates 5 gets a plus for me there. Finally, with regards to the new additions, we have Captain Salazar, who is the titular villain, in the UK at least. Salazar's Revenge. Pah! That title's shit compared to Dead Men Tell No Tales, but oh well. I actually thoroughly enjoyed Captain Salazar and thought Javier Bardem gave a chilling performance. Salazar is a little more Marvel-esque than Davy Jones' Blackbeard or Barbossa, and by that I mean he seems to be much more hellbent on revenge, has some really insane supernatural abilities, and his appearance is also very odd. Yeah, Davy Jones had a face fishier than a man who's just eaten out an entire brothel, but he didn't look undead and have floating hair. I've got no idea why his hair floated that way. Was it meant to be emulating what it would be like underwater? Who knows, but I liked it. I also enjoyed Salazar's motivation. It was simple. He was a pirate hunter who got sent to an early grave by Jack Sparrow, so he wants revenge on the man who killed/cursed him. I can get on board with that. One thing Pirates movies always does well actually is the villains, I feel, so Salazar was as good as expected. However, they always seem to try and villainize the Imperial fleet, which I can never get on board with. They hunt pirates, and so they should. Pirates are despicable people. In this movie they show them hanging people for being witches and then corroborating with a known one, so I can get why the fleet are villains in this movie, but it's just a thought I've always had with regards to the other installments. So every movie boils down to how good its script is, and I have to say that Pirates 5 is mind-numbingly boring. A 4-hour lecture on the history and development of industrial pylons would have had me more gripped. It's incredibly predictable and you wait for everything to happen, but it takes 2 hours 30 to hit all 5 plot beats. The first hour is spent setting up 3 new characters and how they all have a relationship with Jack Sparrow. The entire section could have been done in 20 minutes easily, but instead it just fleshes it out with loads of unnecessary and boring shit, and that can be said for the rest of of the movie. It has a total runtime of 2 hours 30 and only enough plot beats for 1 hour 30 max. This is a problem I have with all of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and it's the main reason I don't like them. I just feel like they go on and on and on without that much happening. You could count the plot beats in these movies on one hand, and yet they still continue to make them longer than the fucking major Marvel movies. If Pirates 5 was an essay, it would take 15 pages to explain one point. There's far too much dialogue, not enough happening, it moves at a snail's pace, and I just wish these movies moved along faster. For a film centred around the fastest boat on the seas, it doesn't half move like a fucking rowboat. Pirates 5 is also very badly written in terms of dialogue. Aside from there being far too much of it, it's also chock full of exposition. There's a scene in the opening 7 hours where a random guy just happens to pick up a conveniently drafted wanted poster of Jack Sparrow and blurts out, "Ah yes, Jack Sparrow, he's dead and he's buried on an island," to Henry, who just happens to be looking for Jack. Then when we're first introduced to Karina, a guy is asking her if she confesses to being a witch, and I can't remember exactly what she says, but it's something along the lines of, "I don't confess to being a witch, but I do confess to being character trait, and I confess to character trait and character trait." It's just painful writing. When we're first introduced to Will Turner, he says to his son, "You know I'm cursed to this ship and I can't step on dry land. It's just the way it has to be, son." That one isn't as bad because I get that it's probably explaining his situation to any newcomers, but it was still noticeable. Honestly, some parts of this movie were just cringeworthy. Another problem is that the Imperial fleet were given absolutely no characterization. In the previous installments we got good characters like Commodore Norrington and Lord Beckett, and the fleet played a big role in each movie. In this they're little more of a nuisance, and they completely waste David Wenham's acting skills by having him play a completely uninspired and underwritten character. I was waiting for the fleet to do something useful to the plot, but they get killed off relatively easily about 3/4 of the way through, having done pretty much nothing. Yet again, Pirates 5 disappoints me. However, there were a couple of things I liked. Firstly, I didn't expect to ever see a Jack Sparrow origin story. While it's brief, it was nice to see how Jack became a captain and where he got his little trinkets during Salazar's massive exposition dump. Admittedly, I don't think it really adds anything to him. I mean, origin stories should affect your opinion on the character and maybe even help justify some decisions they make, and I don't think this quite does either of those, but I still enjoyed it nevertheless. The other parts I liked, and I also like in every Pirates film, were the action set pieces. While I think the plots of these movies leave a lot to be desired, there's absolutely no question that there's effort put into them. The action scenes are always well choreographed, well shot, and extremely entertaining. They often are quite original in their own crazy ways too. This movie is no exception. The first true action scene we get sees Captain Jack trying to keep up while his crew literally robs a bank. And I don't mean rob the money, I mean actually rob the entire building. They drag the whole structure through the streets while Jack is getting shot at, and while it was completely and utterly stupid and bonkers, it was certainly something I've not seen before and thoroughly entertaining. Later in the movie, Jack is due to be executed and he is rescued by his crew, but not without completing several revolutions while attached to a guillotine. It was hilarious seeing Jack spin and spin while we have a static shot attached to the guillotine, looking at the blade come close to his head then fall back to the top. Again, a very original scene that I've never seen before. Finally, there's a great battle scene between Sparrow and Salazar on day 78 of the movie where they are using the ship's cannons as footholds. There was some great stunt work to be seen here, and while it wasn't as inventive as the previous two scenes, it was still very enjoyable. So Pirates 5 definitely doesn't let you down with regards to its action scenes. It's just a shame there's so few of them. That leads me on to the technical aspects of the movie, and yet again this franchise continues to dazzle me with its outstanding visual and special effects. From Salazar's floating hair, which must have taken several lifetimes to complete, to the epic landscapes and ships we see, there's nothing you can criticise. Dead Man's Chest got a lot of accolades for its brilliant visual effects on Davy Jones and his crew, and I think this movie deserves the same amount of respect. Following on from the visual effects, it also has to be said the costume design is fantastic, as it is with all Pirates movies. They're all extremely well made and unique to each character with their own quirks and looks. These movies really annoy me because if they had decent plots they could be true masterpieces. They have all the technical aspects perfected down to a T. They're all very impressive, but they're just constantly let down by bad writing and stretched out plots. It also pleases me to say that the soundtrack is just as solid as ever, and the brilliant Pirates of the Caribbean theme returns with a few twists here and there. It's also used well too, in that it comes in where it should and is never overused. The rest of the soundtrack does its purpose very well too, with some wonderful tracks. I guess Disney can never go wrong when it comes to music. So Pirates 5 still isn't the movie to truly win me over to the franchise. Johnny Depp is weak, the fact that Brenton Thwaites as Will Turner's son has absolutely no impact on the story, which was disappointing. Salazar and Karina are very good additions and are two of the rare good points of the movie. Like the rest of the franchise, the plot is incredibly boring and stretched into a ridiculously long runtime. The script needs to be tighter with more jokes and less exposition. The Imperial fleet are a big disappointment and David Wenham is completely underused. However, it retains some of the more brilliant elements of the franchise with some fantastic action set pieces, striking visual effects, impressive costume design and a decent soundtrack. It also gives us an origin story to Jack, which I enjoyed, but a lot of people may not like that, and I'd understand why. Pirates 5 just has nothing all that new to offer, and even though I'm not a fan of the franchise, I was still monumentally disappointed with it. If the franchise continues, I hope they hire a better scriptwriter and director, because I've just about run out of patience with it now. Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales gets 2 frames out of 5. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Film Rant.